Hello, sweet souls. I'm broadcasting from the cozy corner of your mind where the furniture might be a little mismatched. And if your accent changes depending upon the chair you're sitting in, you're in the right place. Some people live in one language, one place, one version of themselves. Emil is not one of those people. In this episode, I sit down with a friend whose story moves across borders, across languages, and most importantly, across selves. We talk about what it means to build a life outside of our home countries and how queerness is shaped by place and how identity can fracture and expand when you live, love, and work across cultures. This is an invitation to reflect on all the versions of yourself that you carry and the ones you're still becoming. So, let's unpack.
This is the diary of the soul, because behind every face is a story, and behind every story is a lesson. I've actually been looking forward to talking to you since you said yes for this podcast because you're one of the few people that how do I put this? That I can work with, that I can laugh with, I can vent to, and I still trust to give me, side eye when needed. That's you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So it's special to me that you get to be here and we can bring that dynamic to the podcast space.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We always talk really nicely, and I feel like we have a very similar sense of humor, like in an absurdist way. We're also very cynical together, and we seem to kind of laugh at the same things and be like about the same level of crazy, which is very refreshing.
Yeah, that's I think a good lesson in finding friends. You should find the ones that are at like near your level of crazy.
That is true. That is really important, especially in these times.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the bigger soul stretching questions, we start the podcast off with the same opening tradition, which is by rooting ourselves in joy. So, Emil, what's one thing, big or small, that's recently brought you some joy?
That is a very good question. I try to find joy in some small things, every day. I also try to be proud of things that I make because I like being handy. So if I make something or if I do something that makes me feel accomplished, then that makes me really, really happy. Something that has brought me joy recently is me and my partner are in the process of looking for a new place, and everything that goes along with it, the conversations that go along with it, the planning that goes along with it is very interesting, kind of nervous, kind of scary. But it does bring us a lot of joy to explore this completely new side of our relationship together.
Yeah, you're building a new home together. And so you got to take everyone's perspectives into consideration and, what they want from a space and how they want a space to be set up.
It absolutely is a big step. And I think that together with all the joy from making a home together, there will be, of course, a lot of, frustrations from going to IKEA and choosing all the things. But I'm very looking forward to that. And we're still, keeping our fingers crossed that everything goes well with that.
That's really the true test of any relationship is if you can go to IKEA, come back, put something together, and your relationship survives.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm the one who puts things together, and he usually is with a glass of wine near me, giving me encouragement, which honestly is just as important.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as you have the dynamic down packed, there's no need to change it.
I think we're in a good match in that.
Yeah. So I live in a very walkable urban neighborhood, and, you know, I've got restaurants nearby, little shops nearby, at least 3 parks that I can think of off the top of my head, and I feel very lucky to be able to have that in America without having to live in a big city like New York or San Francisco. But recently, I've been trying to make sure I go on 1 to 2 walks in my neighborhood every week and force myself to be more social than I naturally am.
But you hate
Um,
people.
I know. I know.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Something community. Um,
Sure.
so part of that experience, I've been trying to strike up conversations with people that I see either working around their house or on walks. And some of those conversations have actually led into social invites and hanging out with that person. And that's been something that's brought me joy recently because it makes me feel a bit more rooted to my neighborhood and, knowing my neighbors and knowing if I need help or there's an emergency, there's someone that I can turn to that's a couple houses down.
Yeah, I understand that, and that is really nice. And don't take this the wrong way, but that is really American, because well, you've lived in the Netherlands. This is where where we both lived, and that does not fly here. I know some of the we know some of the neighbors on our floor in the building where we live, but other than that, trying to talk to people on the street will not go so well for you. And I think that you know that from your own personal experience. From my little experience that I've had in the US, yes, people do talk. They're very friendly, very communicative. But I think that here in certainly in Amsterdam is just not really like that. I do think that in smaller Dutch cities it is very much different. People do have that sense of I know my neighbors and everybody's in each other's business, which is another kind of nightmare. But in the big city, or well, big for the size of Amsterdam, that's not very likely.
I definitely remember that. And it was very strange to walk by someone and they kind of don't even look at you. But this is someone who I know lives in the building next to me, and I've been living next to this person for years. But I think there's something to be said about the size of the city, like you were saying, because that dynamic is something we also have in the States, but it's more so tied to a place like New York City. You can, of course, strike up conversations with the people that are in your neighborhood, but the city is so massive that you almost become anonymous because it's so massive. And so people can't be going down the street talking to everyone they see because that would just be their whole life. They're like, I got places to be.
Yeah, I have heard that New Yorkers are considered to be rude or so. I haven't been to New York, so I haven't experienced that myself. But I think that that's what people think about Amsterdam, because for the Netherlands, it is a big city. And even though it is small, it is 750,000 people, which is, very, very small in terms of capital cities in Europe and in the world. Um, I think, and there's something about Dutch people that is so very individualistic. And it's, I mean, I don't want to bring it like all the way back to Calvinism and the way that the Netherlands has developed. But I think it has very much to do with you do you and you don't really mind other people. And that is both good and bad, because you can also walk down the street in the craziest outfit and nobody's gonna tell you anything, and they're not really gonna look at you weird. They're just gonna mind their own business. And that is really liberating, that you don't have to consider, oh, what are all these other people thinking about me? But that also means that, well, nobody's really gonna be your your ally, just like walking down the street if something happens.
Mm.
I actually have a memory of that I can share. I broke my ankle last year, literally in the entrance of my building, and I was laying on the floor with my ankle broken, with my partner being next to me. But for the time that he had to go and call the ambulance and get ready for us to go to the hospital, there were some people walking in and out of the building, and only the people who actually knew me were like, "Hey, are you okay?" Now, granted, there's a bunch of homeless people living nearby, and a couple of them have the habit to just lay down on the street, pretty much in the same position as I was laying, just completely flat because, well, it was for me because I had a broken ankle. For them, it's because whatever. So I think that there is a strong possibility some of our neighbors just thought, oh, yeah, that's just another homeless person being here in the entrance of the building. And I'm not gonna mind him any business. And they just like walked past me. But it was only the people who actually knew me from the building that were like, "Hey, are you okay? Should we help you out somehow?" And of course, once the ambulance came, it was all okay. But I experienced this very much just being walked by people literally in my own building.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Do you think it's because you look homeless?
Probably, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, your listeners can't see me, but I usually have two states. I get a haircut, and then I let my hair grow until I look homeless, and then I, rinse and repeat. And that was in winter, so I probably was pretty much homeless looking.
No, I mean, I'm just kidding, but, that's also
I'm
not a
not.
reason also, not a reason to, not check in with someone.
Yeah, but still, it was weird.
One of the reasons why I was excited to sit down and talk with you is because you've built this life, across languages and across cultures. And I'm really fascinated by how all of these elements shape who we are, and how we move through the world. So I think with that being said, it's probably nice for the listeners for you to paint like a snapshot of your world. Where are you? Who's around you? And what's sort of the rhythm of your days?
Yeah, well, my world has changed dramatically since the time that I first came to the Netherlands, which was 15, 16 years ago. I came as a student and I studied here, and then I found work, friends, partners, my chosen family being here in the Netherlands. Right now, I'm probably in the best state of my life that I have ever been. I'm in a loving relationship. I work for a company that I don't hate. I'm not gonna go and say as far as I love it, but I don't hate it. Well, you can attest to we were colleagues for a few years,
Yeah.
and I have good friends around. Like I said, things are happening in terms of trying to find a new place to live. So, I mean, I'm not trying to brag, and I hope that I don't jinx anything. But right now, I must say that as far as expat life is, and I mean, there is obviously everything else going on in the world, which I think we're all aware of, and that is very, very bad. But my personal snapshot of my life is my relationship, my work, my friends, our holidays together, and planning for the future. So I must say that it is looking pretty good.
And so where does home feel like for you these days?
Amsterdam feels like home. My home here, our home together, feels like home because I've been. This is something that I've actually been thinking about a few times. What is my identity? And my identity is not Bulgarian, at least not fully Bulgarian, even though I have lived there for 18, 19, 20 years. Um, it is also not Dutch, even though I have lived here for 16 years. It is almost half of my life now. And I think that my identity is an expat identity. So, not fully integrated into the world where I live. I work in English. I speak to my partner in English for the most part, even though I try to improve my Dutch and sometimes we speak in Dutch together. Um, the media I consume is mostly in English. It's not necessarily in Dutch, and it's not necessarily in Bulgarian. I would say maybe 80% is in English, and then when I speak to my parents, of course, I speak in Bulgarian. And when we watch, let's say, the show together, then it is in Dutch. And when I speak with my partner's family, then we speak in Dutch. Um, but it this identity is very much hanging a bit in the air. And I don't know if you felt the same when you were here. Of course, you were with your partner who was also American. So maybe you had another kind of anchoring. But for me, it is my identity is an expat, and that is a very strange identity to have, because you really don't feel that any place is your home, at
Hmm.
least not 100%. I mean, of course, the Netherlands is my home for 16 years, but I wouldn't say it is 100% my home,
Yeah.
or at least it's not 100% my identity. It is my
Yeah.
home, but it's not my identity.
No, I understand that. Um, I think I had something similar, maybe not to that extent, in that, I didn't feel Dutch when I lived in the Netherlands, but I didn't feel American either. And I think one thing I realized about my identity is that the more places that I live, the more likely it is that I won't get everything that I want. Um, just because, no one city can give you all the things that you want out of a city. When I was in the Netherlands, um, I didn't necessarily feel Dutch because I didn't really have that many Dutch friends. I think it takes a while to break into Dutch circles. But I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of Dutch society, like having really good public transit and, enjoying bike lanes and work life balance. But at the same time, there are things that I missed about America, which were being able to call my parents and it's the same time of day, or seeing my nephew grow up, or being able to navigate an institution in a language that I know and I can speak fluently. But not all those things are going to come together in one space. And so I think the thing that I ended up learning about my identity was that it's this constantly shifting thing. And I think you're kind of alluding to that too, in that when it's never quite one thing, it becomes this thing that you kind of have to piece together, and this thing that you have to pursue by maybe traveling to different places and getting the things you need a piece at a time.
I think that traveling is absolutely the thing that opens your mind and helps you um, contextualize where you are yourself in life. Because, for example, sometimes people ask me, "Oh, how is working in the Netherlands different than working in Bulgaria?" And well, my first answer is I don't know because I spent my entire adult life here. So those cultural um, specificities, I don't have those reference points. But then you go and you work either with foreign colleagues. People from Spain may have different work ethic or different work approach than people from India, than people from Eastern Europe, than people from the US. um, I mean, and it's not necessarily about the big things, but one thing that maybe you noticed also is how Dutch people have their bread and cheese sandwich for lunch, and our Spanish colleagues have this elaborate warm lunch that everybody is jealous of. So even those small things, you learn to distinguish the differences. And of course, when you travel and you actually get to see it in real life when you are there, then it puts your own culture into context. And I must say that now that I have lived abroad for so many years, going back to my home country, it does help me understand things a little bit better, or at least compare it with how things are here or in other countries.
Do you feel like you almost become a different version of yourself when you go back home?
I think I have to. And of course, there's the queer element to it, which is that um, being gay is not as easy, as accepted as celebrated, not at all, in Bulgaria. In many countries, uh, Eastern Europe is not necessarily the most progressive place in the world, and I do feel like I have to tone it down or put a bit of a mask. Not with my family so much, because since I've come out to them, they feel, um, yeah, they're welcoming. But then we're walking on the street with my partner, we can't really hold hands, which is something so natural for us to do here. But of course, we experienced that in other countries. For example, when we were traveling to Morocco, for example, we weren't allowed to sleep in the same hotel room as a couple. We got a hotel room with two separate beds because two men cannot be in one big bed together.
Right.
We have had some of those moments, and it is very confronting when it happens to you for the first time, or when you're not used to it. And yes, when I go back to Bulgaria, or when I go to a place that is not so queer friendly, you have to pretend to be somebody else, because you, or at least you show a side of yourself that is not 100% just out of safety concerns.
Yeah. Have you seen it change at all since you grew up there?
I think so. I think so. And again, I mean, I was deeply closeted in high school, so I wouldn't really have known how things are. That was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, and now there's gay pride, and there's gay bars in the capital. I do think that, again, capital and province is very different. Sofia is a big city with what is it, like 2 million people or so. So you can have that anonymity, you can have that safety in numbers, perhaps. But then again, there's also some backsliding things where there is almost like a bill about not showing gay things on TV. So I think I even shared it one time when we were chatting. We were in a restaurant, we were watching a music channel, and the video of Lil Nas X was censored in some scenes because it was too gay. So you see this and you're like, okay, maybe it's not as progressive as we would want it to be.
Like we're worrying about this in 2025.
I know, and it's, yeah, it's. I mean, it's baby steps, I suppose.
It's funny. Well, as you know, I studied abroad in Bulgaria my junior year in university, and I always remember when I told people that I was going there, the reactions were a mixture of typical American of wait, where is that? Or why would you go there? And at the time, studying abroad was basically a curated list of Western European destinations. You know, everyone wanted to go to Spain or the UK. But at the time, I wanted something that wasn't so prepackaged, that was a bit different. So I landed in Bulgaria, in Blagoevgrad. And to your point about smaller cities, I think they are like less than 100K people. So it really is, you know, more like a town than a city. And it's, you know, about 3 hours outside of Sofia. Um, and the first things I remember was everything was super cheap. You know, like I could go to sit down dinners and have like steak and wine for $6 or $7, or you know, go out and have drinks for 80 cents a drink. And it's a dream for a broke student. But one night I remember when I was out with my classmates, we were at some random bar in town, and I was also in the closet when I was studying abroad in Bulgaria. But when I would drink, I feel like that's when I would, you know, stick my foot out of the closet. And in terms of the drunker I got, the the more the guards came down, and maybe the more flamboyant I would come
Yeah,
become.
your inhibitions, they lower. You become a
Yeah.
little bit freer. And also, how else
Yeah.
are you supposed to flirt with boys unless you queer it up a little bit?
Yeah, you gotta send out the signals. So yeah, we ended up leaving the bar, but I'm, you know, at the peak of the drunk arc, just kind of sloppy and sassy and loud. And we're walking back to the university. And just before you get to the university, you have to cross this bridge. And one of the lights at the end of the bridge was out, as well as some of the lights as you just turn into the campus. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there were a group of guys that had left the bar to follow us. And as soon as I stepped into like that dark patch with no light, I felt, someone shove me in the back. And then I felt someone kick me, and then more. And then I just kind of went down. And I remember my classmates saying, "Run, Alvin, just run." And they ran. And I was obviously just so drunk at that point that I couldn't comprehend how quickly things were changing. And so I just kind of curled up into the fetal position and was just trying to protect my head. That's all I could think about doing while they were kicking me. Eventually they stopped and ran off. And it could be just because we were so close to the campus that they didn't want to risk anyone coming out to see what was happening. But I didn't tell the school, I didn't, report it, I didn't, go to the hospital to get checked out, but, that was a very defining moment because since then I've always wondered, did they attack me because they could sense that I was gay or because I was foreign or because I was drunk and they felt like they could, take advantage of me or rob me or anything? And I'll never know. I don't even remember what they look like, but, it's something that has definitely stayed with me because I think to this day, even when people are very close behind me, I always kind of have to turn around and do a vibe check and see. I don't like people behind me that often. I just get a little bit like, I get taken back to that moment because I think I carry the trauma of that experience with me a bit. Um, but yeah, I always wonder like what was the cause of that attack.
God, that is really horrible. I'm so sorry that that happened. And like you say, I there's no way to know what it was. I would have, my first thought would have been they probably wanted to rob you because I think that you probably stood out being foreign, and they thought, yeah, look, he's American, he probably has money. But I don't know if they attempted to rob you. I mean, this whole thing sounds incredibly traumatic, and I'm so sorry that that happened. I don't think that there is really any way to know what the reason was, but the fact that you even have to wonder, now was it because I was maybe too flamboyant or whatever, is just a really shitty thing that that happens to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this extra layer that you have to use when going out into the world and thinking about how do I protect my queerness.
Yeah, I think that's why when my first instinct when going to places that are not so friendly is to just hide it, tone it down. I mean, also, I'm not a particularly small guy, so that probably works well in my in my favor. But yeah, we have to be aware of those things, unfortunately.
So I guess on the
But
flip side of that, what's something that surprised you about being gay in Amsterdam?
yeah, I was just gonna say that that conversation turned turned sad. Alvin, you're supposed to be more fun than that.
Yeah. We have our peaks and valleys.
That we do. What I found fun in Amsterdam. Um, I think the especially in my early years when I was a student and when I was going out a little bit more. I mean, I'm almost 40 now. Like my Fridays are just watching Netflix. Like that's just what happens. Well, that's what happens to me anyway. But when I was younger, and I would be going out, I would be meeting people. There was this sense of community that I never had, especially at Pride. I had never missed Pride, and especially ever since I came to Amsterdam, and especially in the first years. I was so incredibly happy and proud to even just be present on that day. I didn't even have to do anything particular. It was just about being part of that vibe, of that community, of seeing people like me exist, be happy, be feel like a strong, healthy community. And I know that everybody now complains it is getting too commercial and it's to this and to that. Um, but honestly, coming from a place where this was just not the thing, to feel celebrated was making me so happy. And that is one thing that I really enjoyed about the city, being able to go to different bars. I mean, going out on dates when I was single, trying all the pleasures that Amsterdam had to offer, um, in all their shapes and sizes, and I don't know how explicit I should get.
That as explicit as
um,
you want to. I think we have
but
an explicit rating, so
yeah, well, you can bleep up some some things.
this is not for the kids. I'll say that.
No, no, cover your ears. Go watch Pet Patrol or whatever it is that the kids watch. Yeah, I mean, look, I had my wild days, not gonna lie. I had my um going out and meet random people at 3 a.m. and then, just go to work completely dead the next day because I've only gotten a few hours of sleep. Um, and that was fun, not gonna lie. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. When you were talking about pride, that also resonated with me because I think that's the best pride that I've experienced in any city. And I think it's because it's just so integrated. The entire city is part of pride, whether it's going to be the boats that are part of the parade or all the different parties that happen, across the city center. It definitely feels like everyone's in it, and it feels like a very safe space to express your queerness. And that's one thing that I noticed, right off the bat and have enjoyed about Pride as well. So that definitely resonates with me.
I think what I really appreciate is how many non-queer people there are at Pride as well.
Yeah.
Especially in the last years, there have been so many families with kids coming to watch the boats and to maybe not participate so much in the street parties because yeah, if you're with a 10-year-old, 8-year-old kid, you're not going to be partying, but just being there and normalizing this for the next generation, I think that is the biggest benefit of that. Um, I think that some people say that pride, I mean, pride should be a protest, of course. It is, but it can also be a celebration of what we have already accomplished, um, without losing the idea that there is also so much to be accomplished, if not in this country, then in other countries in the world. But when I see fathers and mothers coming with their kids to enjoy Pride and to see how normal they react to drag queens, to people, guys in leather on this on the boats, even a little bit more the kinky boats. It just feels that it is getting normalized for the next generation, and then the next generation is going to be even more accepting. And I think that that's not only good for us as adults, queer people, but also for all these kids that are in high school or even before high school, and they might not feel safe to come out because even here, there's not fully accepted. I mean, you can still get bullied in school for being gay. But hopefully, with normalizing all this and celebrating it, every generation is going to make it a little bit easier for the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I do think there is something to be said about the commercialization of Pride. It does feel like it's very easy for like a bank to put up a pride flag and then be part of the pride celebrations. And so I can also understand the perspective of people saying that um it shouldn't just be a party And I think it could also do with getting back to like protecting people's rights and advocacy as like part of the pride celebrations. Cause I do think that that part is minimized compared to the party aspect, which is maximized. But if there are people bringing their families, there are benefits to that party making the future generations more accepting. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword, but I think it could also do with finding more balance on both sides.
I think something that has also changed in the last years, and I'm really happy to see it, is that there is a lot more Pride events in the Netherlands. There used to be just the Amsterdam Pride. It's the beginning of August. It's not even in June in Pride month. It's usually in August just because the weather is a little bit better. Uh, but then there was Utrecht Pride. It's actually started as a middle finger to the Amsterdam Pride. That is a little bit of a inside gossip because there's a guy from Utrecht. He has a gay bar there, and he wanted to have a boat on the Amsterdam Pride, but the organization told him, no, that's not going to happen. So just as the meme goes, I'm going to make my own, what was it, strip club with, I forget the meme. But essentially, he said, well, you're not going to let me in Amsterdam Pride. I'm going to make my own Pride. And that's how Utrecht Pride happened. And the vibe there is very different because Utrecht is a much smaller city. There is one canal through the center, but unlike the Amsterdam canals, just if I can describe it a little bit so people can imagine it, there are these platforms that are on almost the same level as the canal, that were essentially used in the past to load and offload goods. So people can actually be very, very close to the water and not just on the side. And because there is only one canal and it's much smaller, it has a much more intimate feeling. So Utrecht Pride was, I think, the second one that happened. There is Rotterdam Pride as well, which I've never been to, but I've heard good things about. I think this year there is also Zaandam Pride. And I'm pretty sure that there is Alkmaar Pride and quite a few other prides in different weekends throughout summer. So something that started just as this giant Amsterdam party has now kind of crept its way into other smaller places, and I think that that is fantastic for the local communities. You can celebrate being gay in many other places than just having to come to Amsterdam, and you can have that party atmosphere and that feeling of community, I think, in other places, which hopefully continues because I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. You also said something that made me realize that part of the thing that surprised me about queerness in Amsterdam was just how international it is, because it is an international city that obviously spreads to, the subcultures as well. And it was nice to have people in my orbit that, are gay, but they're from Bulgaria, for example, or they're from Uruguay, or they're from Mexico. And you start to see the gay experience shifts, in all of these places. But also there's some commonalities there too. Almost everyone has gone through a period of not being able to be themselves for a certain amount of time in their life in their home country, or because they've decided to come out, has lost connection to families or to community, and has built chosen family, to replace that. And to see sort of like that beautiful amalgamation of cultures come together, I think was one of the things that surprised me about living there, because it made me realize that queerness is sort of less a sexuality and more, I guess, a culture or lens in which I can look at the world and build commonalities with people.
I think that is absolutely correct. I absolutely believe that being gay, being queer is a culture. We have our own vocabularies. We have our own terminology. We can talk in ways that straight people do not necessarily understand. and we get it. And like you say, it spans cultures, and it's really interesting to see how these experiences, it's almost like milestones in this gay experience, like the being closeted bit, the having a fake girlfriend bit, or a beard. For the people who listen, a beard is not something you have on your face. It is a girl that pretends to be your girlfriend, so that you're not outed as gay. I mean, there is so much that is universal, uh, between different cultures, and I think that especially in these big parties, they yeah, we get together and we can have fun, we can celebrate, we can get wasted. That's fun too.
Yeah, yeah, true. Another part of your story that I know that's shaped you in some deep and complex ways is your experience with HIV. And I'd love to hear whatever part of that story you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, well, that is something that has for a long time wasn't a story that I have felt particularly comfortable sharing. There is was a lot of stigma around having HIV, and it's been 10 years for me, since I tested positive. So that was in 2014 or 2015. I genuinely don't remember anymore. And to be honest, I feel like that's a good thing, because I guess it shows that it doesn't have as much of an impact on me, that I don't necessarily remember it. Um, but it was one of the scariest, oh, absolutely the scariest moment of my life. The moment when I went for a regular check, because I was trying to be a very good, a responsible adult gay. I was
A
going,
responsible slut.
oh, yay. I went for my 3 monthly check, and I thought it was just gonna be a routine little, you don't have gonorrhea, you don't have syphilis, you don't have, all the good stuff, test. And then as they draw the blood and I look at the test, there is not one dot, but there is two dots. And I think that everybody who has done a COVID test and has tested positive knows how that feeling goes. But now it's about something that changes you for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I was, oh God, I was so, so scared. That was the first thing that went through my mind. It was just fear that my life has completely changed, fear that, I mean, I know it sounds dramatic, but that nobody will love me, that I wasn't necessarily scared about my health. I guess I knew that there were therapies at that time, but
It's not like the 80s anymore.
exactly. Yes, the people there, they were so reassuring. They said, we're going to make you appointment with the hospital. You're going to go to more, well, not tomorrow, it was Friday, but you're going to go as soon as you can. You're going to be fine. And they tried to explain to me everything. Uh, but for me, the world had stopped. Once I went out from that testing center, it felt like just the world was passing by, and I was frozen in one place, and I felt completely in a dissociated state, because my life had fundamentally changed, from that point onwards. It did not help that I was going back to my parents in 2 days, so I had to pretend that everything was fine, that I'm not going insane on the inside for the 2 weeks that I was with my parents. Um, I had also just started a new job that I was going to start as soon as I came back from being with my parents. So I really did not need this at that point of time. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody really needs it, but I certainly did not need it. Um, and I just had to, because you said before, do you put on, like, do you pretend to be somebody else when you go to a different country? Well, I had to pretend about a lot of things. um at the same time, I also had to call a bunch of people to say, hey, even though, to the best of my knowledge, I have played safe and all that, um, still, please get tested just to make sure, those were not fun conversations to have. But what amazes me is that throughout this journey of 10 years, I have gone from a place of fear, depression for months at a time, to currently being incredibly happy with who I am and how my health is, with having an incredible partner who does not see it as a problem. Um, and actually being proud, not being proud of it, but not being ashamed of it, which is, I think, something that a lot of people with HIV really, really struggle with. There is so much stigma and there is so much judgment because if you've gotten it, well, you almost must deserve it, right? You must have done something to deserve it. Um, and it has shaped me in many ways, but a lot of those ways have been actually becoming more empathetic towards people with all kinds of situations, all kinds of marginalized situations, and also just being a little bit kinder to myself, which I really needed to be because I had to forgive myself.
To your point about the stigma, even the vocabulary that people, I don't know if they still use it now, but before that would use on Grinder was, "Are you clean?" to, indicate that you don't have HIV, implying that someone's dirty if they do have it. And I think that sort of informs so much about how our own community saw something that was impacting us. So that was very unfortunate to see that. But I am curious, what were some of the turning points for you to start seeing yourself in a different light and not having that sense of shame?
I think that uh, being accepted seeing the acceptance of people was really helpful. Essentially, how it worked for me, and of course, it works different for different people in different countries, different healthcares, was that I got my test results, and then I had to wait a certain amount of time because it was summer. Not so many doctors were in the hospital to get through the process of having my tests, my blood work, and everything that needed to assure that I was healthy. For people who want to get a little bit more technical, that has to do with the viral count and with the amount of blood cells, white blood cells in your blood. Essentially, the viral count is how much of the virus there is in the blood. The lower, the better, and that is better for your health and also to not transmit to other people. And the white blood cells are essentially the cells in your body that fight the virus, and they also fight every other virus in your body. So if those are high enough, then you will be healthy. Like your immune system will not be suffering. Um, then once the tests for those go, they decide whether or not to put you on medication. Um, what really, I mean, this is a little bit of gay history, but I think it might be interesting, is that, like you said, it's different than the 80s.
Teach us.
In the 80s and in the 90s, the side effects from medication were so bad that they didn't put you on meds until you were really, really sick. So first, they were waiting for your blood cells, white blood cells, to go down in numbers to the point where your body is already almost on the border of having AIDS, because having HIV and having AIDS are of course not the same thing. And then only at that time, once you actually become really bad, they would start giving you the medicine because it would keep you alive, but it would also mess up your life because of the side effects. So only in like the late 2000s, and again, if somebody who is listening has much more medical knowledge than me, they will probably correct me, but this is just my understanding. I'm not a medical person. Only around the time when I actually started with the medication, about a year before that, did the policy change to start with medication immediately, because at that time they were like, okay, the meds are good enough, no side effects, and they will keep you healthy. And the one of the biggest changes that happened to me psychologically was when in 6 weeks I tested and I was undetectable. And undetectable means that the medication works so good at suppressing the virus that even though you test positive for it because you have the antibodies for it, they cannot actually count how many copies of the virus there is in a milliliter of blood. And I believe that if you are under 20 copies per milliliter, you are considered undetectable. And that also means that you are also untransmittable. You cannot, I hate the word infect, but you cannot pass it on to a different person. So once that happened, I knew that for my own health, I was going to be healthy, that it wasn't going to affect my health. But I also knew that I was not a danger to somebody else, because the feeling that
Mm.
you essentially carry almost like poison and you can transmit that poison or that toxicity, um, it's very unhealthy. But I felt toxic for months until I actually knew that I was undetectable. Um, and what other thing that changed was that people, some people, not everybody, but some people treated me kindly. I remember that one time I went out on a date with a guy, and we were making out, and that went fine. We were just sitting on his couch, and he wanted to go to bed. And I told him, okay, but just so you know, I have HIV. He literally jumped off the couch. Like that,
Oh, wow.
literally, I'm not exaggerating. He just involuntarily jumped back. Um, so needless to say, that didn't make me feel very nice, and it was pretty much the end of the date. But then other people were
Yeah.
kind, and that kindness made me feel made me feel good, made me feel accepted.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. That's, I mean, a very shitty experience, but obviously not the person for you. So I'm glad they're not in your life. Um, but yeah, I think, our community has done a lot of growing and changing, especially as we educate ourselves on what all of these terms mean. I think that also helps people realize how HIV can and cannot be transmitted and what undetectable means and what it means with the changing medicine. Because I'm also curious if you've seen a change in the community just with the advent of PrEP.
Yes, that was what I wanted to say also, that that's another huge element, that because so many guys are now on PrEP, it is much less of an issue. And again, it only is an issue if you don't use a condom or if you play bareback, as the term is. And not gonna lie, that is fun. Um, and I think that with the acceptance of and the prevalence of PrEP, a lot more guys feel much more relaxed about, because obviously things happen also, like condoms break and whatnot. So you want to be double sure if you can be, which I think is very good. And I think that that just makes people relax. I think there is also a generational shift where a lot of people my age, but also older, like who are currently in their 40s and 50s, they lived through the 80s and the 90s, and they saw their friends die. A friend of mine told me sometimes they had to choose which funeral to go to because there were too many funerals on the same weekend, so they couldn't go to everybody. And if you go through something like this, it scars you for life. I absolutely understand that. So that generation is super cautious of HIV, and I think that is traumatized by it. The younger generation, because they actually haven't lived through that, um, accept it more like high blood pressure or diabetes.
Hmm.
It's a condition. You have to take medicine for it. You take a pill once a day, and you don't have high blood pressure anymore, and or you don't have to worry about your blood sugar. Like that is very much what the current medical consensus also is, because it's not even so much a disease as is just a chronic condition that can be managed with medication. And again, this comes from an incredibly privileged point of view, living in the Netherlands, where the people, the gay community is fairly educated on these things. PrEP is more affordable. The healthcare system takes care of me, and and just the general societal acceptance is a little bit higher. Um, if I go on holiday in a country where things are not like that, I honestly have to worry about, can I take my meds with me? And are they not going to make a problem about me bringing them? Because I know that there are countries where if they see that you even have those meds, they don't let you in.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I don't want to name countries because I'm not 100% sure if that is still the case,
Right.
but that was the case.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that might sound crazy and also makes me feel very fortunate and very privileged is that only until about a couple of years before um, I got diagnosed, the bank would not give you a mortgage to buy a place because you were not expected to live 30 years, which was the duration of the mortgage.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's
Y-
crazy.
I know, that is insane because your life expectancy was simply not long enough for you to be able to pay off the mortgage. So,
And they're like, we need our
um,
money.
yeah, it's like, I mean, you're sick, but capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of those things that you don't really think about until it happens to you.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Progress, you know?
I know.
Is there anything else that you wish people understood?
I don't know, honestly. Like I definitely am no authority on the matter. I'm just sharing my very, very limited experience. But I also know that it's very different in different countries. I mean, kind of this whole conversation has been about how it is to live in a different place. And I know from having talked to people who have HIV in Bulgaria that when they go to get their meds, it is almost shameful. They're made to feel almost like to be ashamed of it. They go in some sort of I mean, this is not going to paint my country in a good light, but or my former country in a good light. But from what
Did you
I
give up your
heard,
passport?
I did. I did.
Uh,
They're not gonna they're not gonna deny me entry. They almost have to go to like a basement, and then the person who gives them the medicine does it with a glove, with almost like, again, that whole feeling of like, if you have it, you're toxic, so I cannot even touch you without having a glove on. And that is simply to give them a pack of medicine, which is absolutely ridiculous. A bottle of pills. So yeah, I would say that actually, if I can say one thing is that if anybody who is listening is in this situation, especially in the early months or in the early moments of that, the one thing that saved me were people that I could talk to. Um, you will lose people because there is this thing about coming out to people with HIV, uh, if you have it, is very much like coming out gay. Like you kind of have to tell people, and you don't know how they're going to react. And some people are going to be disgusted with you. Some people are going to judge you. Some people are going to pity you. I mean, we have experienced these things when coming out as queer people to other people in our life. Um, it's just that you have to keep doing that with your partners, and it's a never-ending process. Um, Also, yeah, what I would like to say is, if you're in that situation, find somebody you can trust, because the friends are gonna be the people who are gonna pull you out of that really like dark place that you're gonna be in the beginning, or that you can be. Hopefully not, because things have changed in the last years. But if you are in that place where you're questioning your worth, or feeling that you're unclean, because, like you said, that is also part of the vocabulary. Um, yeah, rely on your friends. They're gonna save you.
I like that. It's always community, you know? There's a lot of wisdom in that. And there's a lot of wisdom and sass in your experience and everything that you've shared already.
And sass and ass.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of um, blossomed sexually after I got HIV. Just because I suppose I didn't have to worry about it anymore.
In what way?
In the way that I wasn't afraid to experiment. In the sense that I guess my point of view was, well, this already happened to me. What is the worst that can happen? So I was a lot more willing to take risk, and not to take risk as in risk with my health, but perhaps to be more adventurous and to maybe do something that I was too shy or too timid to do before. Um, I definitely had a lot of experiences that I don't think I would have had, had I not changed as a person as a result of my diagnosis. Not purely because I had HIV, but because it changed who I was as a person. It made me more secure. It made me more
Mm.
adventurous. And like I said, I think that my mindset to an extent was, well, it's not going to be worse than what I've already been through. So just whatever life has to give me, just bring it on, because I survived this and I'm going to survive everything else. And if we want to end up on a positive haha note, then I would say that is one thing, at least for this, that it made me so much better than I was before.
Yeah, I like that journey for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to pull back a bit and sort of look at how all these experiences, language, queerness, dating, have shaped your sense of self. Um, and so I guess with that in mind, what have all these different pieces taught you about your identity?
I would say that it made my identity very fluid, perhaps, in a way. Like, I don't think that my opinions are set in stone. I don't think that where I am in life is set in stone. Um, and I think that having to think and work and live in three different languages, um, having to your cat is adorable.
Thanks.
Having to go through these challenges in life, I think that it has made me more resilient, and it has made me also not take myself too serious, because the last thing that I wanted to be is one of those people who is sure about everything, because God knows I'm not. I'm a mess. I mean, you know that I am a mess.
I
Like,
mean, we're
I'm a
all a
very
mess.
organ. We are, and that's why we're friends. But I would really hate to be one of those people who thinks they know everything and that they know best and that they cannot learn anything. Um, my life has taught me that the world is so much bigger than your immediate surroundings, and the world is so much bigger, more diverse, and more interesting than if you don't really try to explore it. I think that you what I want to do with my life is to grow as a person, and I think that these experiences, um, and my life so far has really helped me grow as a person, because you cannot go to a different country and not be flexible, because if you go to a different country or a different culture and you choose to not engage with it in any way, shape, or form, then you're gonna be incredibly lonely. You're just not gonna have any friends. You're not gonna feel like you belong. um, and you will be miserable. You have to not, I'm not saying forget where you came from, but you absolutely should embrace also the place where you go and the culture where you have mixed with. Um, and I think that with this and with meeting people from different cultures, like you say, we have friends from so many different places. Um, you understand that your way of doing things or the way that you grew up is not the only way. It's also not necessarily the best way. And then I think if you take that kind of mindset and you keep yourself open to new things, be that new foods, new experiences, new music, but also new points of view. Um, then that's going to be super beneficial because that's going to be able to not be one of those angry old men yelling at the cloud because the world has changed and you don't understand it anymore.
Yeah. No, I think that that is very well put. I wonder too if you feel like have any parts of yourself fractured or expanded because of this flexibility and identity that you hold on to now?
Well, for one, I forgot how to speak my own language, so there's that. The number of times I'm trying to talk to my parents and I'm trying to explain something and I simply don't have the word for it, is honestly way too
Yeah.
embarrassing.
But it's not your everyday
Also,
language anymore.
it is not. And I think that so recently my partner and I we were in Bulgaria on holiday, and I was talking to a waitress in a restaurant, and I was reading the menu, and I was saying we would like to have this and this and this. And we were on the coast. There is a lot of tourists there, and she looked at me beaming with happiness, and she said to me, "Oh my God, you speak Bulgarian so well." And I looked at her, and I thought, "But I am." So yeah. Well, she clocked it immediately. She pretty much immediately said, "Oh, but then you must live abroad because the way you speak, you don't speak normal." Well, she said it nicer, but that was what she meant.
Just like mixing in English words or something, or
No,
just
not
how
even.
you
No,
structure the sentence?
I was not mixing English words, at least not
Oh.
then. I think it was just about how I spoke, maybe my pronunciation, maybe my intonation, maybe my vocabulary. I really don't know, but she was so proud of me because I had learned Bulgarian so well.
Yeah. Oh gosh. When I think about my identity, since I've lived abroad now, it's probably both fractured and expanded. And I think when I think back to who I was as a young kid, when I was growing up, I saw a lot of images in American media, especially Black media, that centered on a very strong materialism narrative. And so many videos from the early 90s or the late 90s and early 2000s were about flaunting wealth. And I think I internalized a lot of that because all I wanted when I was younger was like a mansion, some designer clothes, and like a Mercedes S Class. And I remember going to like really wealthy neighborhoods and just driving around to look at the houses to like keep those images in my head. Or, going on luxury car websites and decking out cars with all of the premium features just to see how much money it would cost to buy these like six-figure vehicles. Their status symbols and their rewards for working hard. And as I got more breathing space from those images by studying and living abroad, I did a lot of deprogramming of those American values and the work mindset that you often need to have to achieve those things and stay in that sort of cycle and trap of thinking of that's how you prove your sense of worth. And It's funny when I was working for a company, when I used to live in California, I remember I wanted to go on a trip to Thailand and I needed to take 7 days off. And the first thing my manager said when I told my manager about the trip, they're like, "Ugh, you're taking 7 days? Like, what are we gonna do with all of your work?" And it wasn't like a joke or trying to be funny, like, they were being serious. And, I still went, of course, because in that way, I'm very not American. But she was very clearly flustered about me taking 7 days, like it was some sort of betrayal. But I do remember on that trip thinking in the back of my head, is this something that's gonna come up in my performance review? And fast forward, to me working in Amsterdam, and I remember my manager at the time, when I told him that I like to travel, his response was completely different. It was, "Oh, where are you going for your holiday?" And not taking time off would be the weird thing to do. And oftentimes people go somewhere for 2, sometimes 3, sometimes a month at a time. And of course, we're talking about a different country that has different labor laws, and they dictate the minimum amount of days that you can have off depending upon how many days you work. But it made me realize that so much of my identity before was built on productivity. And when I moved to the Netherlands, I was very eager to get rid of that sentiment. And so those pieces of me fractured, but they were also pieces that I think needed to fracture so that the things that lead to a more fulfilling life expanded. And those are the values that I still carry with me from my time abroad, work life balance and traveling and spending a few hours at a cafe just to catch up with friends. And so I think my identity is also flexible now in that it kind of carries different pieces from all the places that I've lived.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Unfortunately, I can't necessarily relate to that particular area simply because I've never worked back home, back in Bulgaria. When I was only a student when I left, so my entire work experience is in the Netherlands. And like you say, being able to leave on holiday for extended period of time, and I think that also has to do with kind of our area of work. Not everybody is as fortunate or as privileged to be able to do that. Um, but one anecdote that I can say is that I know that from my brief encounters with knowledge about how work is in Bulgaria. For example, I have heard that in some places, when you sign a contract to work, you also sign a blank piece of paper that is essentially your resignation letter. So if they want to get rid of you for any reason, they can just fill in that resignation letter that you have already signed. And then they just put in the date, and there is your official resignation letter. Now, is this real? That I don't know. I have heard it as an anecdote. I wouldn't put it past them to do that in some companies. The grind culture, which I think is what is in the US, is very much, I think, present in Bulgaria as well, with the addition of much harsher economic situation. And also, that is a much larger, very interesting conversation that we can have about the way Gen Z is kind of turning things on its head about that. That it's not, oh, my identity is a worker. No, I want to find
Mm.
my work life balance. I am not what I do. I just do what I do. And I think that with me, that has also kind of changed just by the virtue of getting older. I must say, when I first had when I had my first internship, I worked so much harder than I do now, which I think is probably the case for many people who have worked in an industry long enough. But if I can give one more funny example of how my identity has changed, is that you said that you grew up with this idea of um, uh, uh, practical or physical things having value and like being the the measure of success. Um, I, as a child, was brainwashed by American Christmas movies. For everybody who has seen American Christmas movies, you know how the houses look, how the interior is everything decorated. It's all sparkly, it's all shiny, it's so beautiful. You have the fireplace, you have the pillows, you have the bed covers, you have the everything is just Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. Well, now I'm an adult with adult money to spend. And I must say that I am trying to unhealthily live this fantasy every year at home, very much to the annoyance of my partner, who I'm pretty sure gets very tired of me bringing another box of Christmas ornaments every year, to the extent where our basement is 50% Christmas boxes. um and yeah, that is the one thing that I feel like I am absolutely trying to relive my childhood trauma, and to make my house winter palooza or Christmas palooza. And I am very proud to say that I am succeeding.
Yeah. Hey, not all trauma you have to get rid of. Yeah, I'm curious what, given all of these different experiences, what feels like home to you now? Is it a place or like a language or a person?
I think, especially since my last relationship, home, my boyfriend feels like home, because we might be looking to move to a new house together. We might be in the future looking to retire, let's say in Spain, so we can be one of those couples living on the beach, retiring
Yeah, also
early.
with a guest house so I can visit.
Oh, absolutely. You're always more than welcome. And I mean, and so are all the Spanish men in Spain. That's the that's always a good thing to have around. But I would say that the one constant and is the fact that we're looking towards the future together. And I don't realistically think we're going to move anywhere out of Amsterdam for the foreseeable future, because Amsterdam is our home. It's also where we work. So I think that we are, and I personally am so well settled in this city, which again, I don't necessarily feel like an Amsterdamer, and I certainly don't feel like a Dutch person. Um, but the good thing about this particular city in this particular country is that you can live as an expat. Um, you said that it was nice when you went back to the US, or when you were in the US, that you could navigate the system in your own language, and that you didn't, maybe have to deal with the way that Dutch people do things. Um, but I guess that after having lived here for so many years, I just feel like I'm used to that. I don't really see myself changing it. Um, it truly is my home, and it is a chosen home, which I think makes it that much better.
I definitely think that it's a shifting term as well for me, listening to you describe it. It's not just one static thing. And I used to struggle with that question of where's home because it never felt like one place. But now I know, now that I'm older, that I can stop looking for one answer. Definitely a set of things. When I think about it, it's like fresh vegetables from my dad's garden when I go over to their house. It's like my mom's homemade sweet potato pie. It's living in a city where I feel safe as a queer black man to walk down the street.
That is so important.
Yeah, it's also seeing my nephew grow up and seeing the next generation of my family. It's having experiences with friends. And so I think it isn't just a location so much as it's a set of feelings that I chase. And the truth is, like I said before, sometimes I have to travel to get all of those pieces. And I don't know if that's poetic or inconvenient, but I'm okay with that because it works, for me. So yeah,
Yeah,
home is a composite term.
I think for me, one thing that changed over the years is also this idea that I'm no longer looking for things to be perfect. Like it's not about having, I mean, I don't have a car, but if I did, about having the perfect car, having the perfect clothes, the perfect apartment, the perfect holiday, the perfect this, the perfect that. Um, I think that, so I'm not a perfectionist. And to be honest, I'm very happy that I'm not, because being content with what I have is honestly enough. And there is there is the curse of the gifted child, that when you're a child and you're a gifted child, you feel like you're going to accomplish so much. You're going to change the world. Well, I'm not changing the world. And honestly, that's fine. I don't have to, but it took me a while. It took me a while to understand that where I am in life and who I am in life and being content with that is enough. And I don't have to, that does not mean that I don't strive for more or I don't strive to improve myself or to become a better version of myself. But if I'm constantly not satisfied with where I am in life, and I want something better, and then I will just never be satisfied. And I think it's a skill and it's a mindset, and also to relate to what you said about where do you feel like home. Well, if your mindset is that wherever you are is home, then wherever you are will be home. And of course, there are certain things like the vegetables and the fruits from your parents' garden. When I went back to my parents last month, we had a bucket of strawberries every day, and you just cannot have that here. And you know, those are one of those moments when it brings you joy, it brings you happiness, and you're okay that it's only going to be for 2 weeks and it's not going to be for the other part of the year, because those 2 weeks will make it special and is enough, at least for me. Also, 2 weeks with the parents more than enough. um
Otherwise, someone's gonna die.
oh yes, absolutely. But I think that mindset really has come with me getting maybe a little bit older, a little bit more content and more secure with myself and with my life.
I don't know. It's a beautiful sentiment, especially the learning one scale in the world. I think is very important, and realizing that it really does start at home. If you want to change anything, like you've got to change your relationship with yourself and your relationship with the people that are in your immediate environment. And that is great and that can already be enough. But before you can go out and like change the world, you have to kind of start there first. And if everyone kind of does that, then everyone's changing society, and so we can all do a small piece. It doesn't have to be one person doing this mega project on their own.
I also think that as queer people, especially as queer people who have moved like you did and like I have, um, you get to pretty much choose your entire life. You get to choose where you live. You get to choose who your friends are. You get to choose your environment, and you also get to reinvent yourself. And I think that that is one of the most interesting things. I don't know if you felt that way when you went as a student to Volgograd, to Bulgaria, and also when you moved to the Netherlands. And I'm curious to hear that from you, your opinion on it. But when I came as a 20 something year old in Amsterdam, I could kind of leave my luggage behind and I could be who I wanted to be. Nobody knew me. And that, yes, that can be lonely because nobody knows you. But on the other hand, you can leave a lot of those old hangups before. You can leave them in the past and you can just choose who you want to hang out with, choose what you want to do and how you want to develop yourself. And that can be difficult because you have all the responsibility, but that can also be really liberating. And a lot of people don't get that chance. Many people don't really leave their hometown. They don't leave their high school friends. And that has its own beauty. Absolutely, I'm not gonna argue with that. Having the same friends from high school, to retirement, that is also a wonderful thing. But many people don't get to have the chance to reinvent themselves. And queer people, especially queer migrants, queer expats, we have that opportunity to do it. And you only can do it a few times in your life. You can do it when you go for college because nobody knows you, and you can do it if you move somewhere after college or when you go to a new city. And it gets harder to do it as you get older. Did you have any kind of thoughts or experiences like that as well?
Yeah, I think probably every place I've lived, not even abroad, but also within the States, just leaving home allowed me to become a different version of myself. And I think one story that illustrates this is I didn't come out of the closet until I moved away from home. And I felt like I could, one, if things went terribly with telling my family, I could be in a space where I supported myself completely and if need be cut off those ties, as horrible as that sounds, just preparing for the worst case scenario.
That sounds
But
unfortunately very realistic for so many people. And
yeah,
it is sad that it has to be sometimes that way, but what you did was very, very smart in terms of your own self-preservation.
yeah, because you don't know how people will respond. But but two, I think I was able to think about it or frame it in that way because I did move away and I could be okay, let me try on what it's like to be gay now that I don't have these people around me who have accepted this story that I've been putting forth for all these years that I'm straight. I don't have to worry about changing their perspective or them getting used to a new story because I'm now surrounding myself with new people who don't know my backstory. And so, in a lot of ways, moving away from home is what gave me the courage to come out of the closet. And that was such a big paradigm shift in my life, obviously. And I see that in different arenas of my life and every move that I've made, even moving to the Netherlands, for example, I could try out a new area in tech. I worked in tech ever since I graduated, but I never did mobile app development until I moved to the Netherlands, and that's what gave me the courage to try something new there and to sort of sell the skills that transfer over from working in different parts of tech. So I think with every move, I've always tweaked something, and I've always tried to get rid of the parts that don't serve me and try out something new.
I think that is what makes the life experience better. You have to grow, you have to develop. Otherwise, you're stuck in the same place and you don't make any changes. And the thing is that life will change around you. So if you don't adapt to it, same as evolution, you're gonna go extinct. Your skills are gonna go extinct, or your relationships are gonna go extinct because you didn't change, or you didn't seek therapy, or any of those things that make you, a little bit of a better person.
Yeah. Well, closing question for you. What would you say to someone who's just starting out? Whether they're leaving their home country or navigating queerness or starting life in a new language. Do you have any advice from your experience?
I would say to plan for the worst and hope for the best, because it's really important to have a backup of your backup. um it would be amazing if things just happen great from the first time that you decide to move to a country or change something about your life. It's not necessarily going to stick the first time. Somebody that I knew, he was from Italy. He came to the Netherlands, didn't really work out the first time, went back to Italy, improved from his experience, learned, came back again, and essentially used what he had learned in order to make a better situation for himself. And I understand that not everybody is fortunate to be able to do that. Certainly not financially, let's say. But be brave and find people around you who are going to support you, but don't really rely on them, in the sense that be self-sufficient, have people who will support you. I mean, I know that's contradicting, but you know what I mean, right? Like, you cannot ask
No,
other
of
people
course, yeah.
to save you. So you have to do it yourself, but that doesn't mean that you cannot have people who support you in life.
And they can help you with pieces, but to expect everyone to do all the pieces for you is unrealistic. And there are people out there who will do that for you, but, you shouldn't
Yeah.
rely on
Or,
that.
if you're cute, find a sugar daddy. That always helps.
Yeah, work your angles, we all have different routes to
Yeah,
the
you
same
have to.
dream.
Like, you have nice feet, go on Feet Finder. You can find ways.
Yeah, I like that advice, and I think that's sort of how I've also lived my life, so that resonates. And I think to add on to that, I would say to take the dream or whatever it is you're pursuing and just break it down. If that's moving abroad, coming out, starting something new, learning something new, I think making it smaller makes it less scary, at least for me, because otherwise it's very easy to get stuck in the what ifs and the worst case
Mm.
scenarios. When I moved to the Netherlands, I didn't have a job lined up. I wasn't recruited from abroad. The only person I knew at the time was my ex-husband, and I had never worked outside of the US before. But I knew, the first thing I had to do was to start building a network and start looking for jobs and create a CV. And eventually my life started to take shape. And it wasn't always smooth. And things definitely did go wrong. And so, to your point, I think it's good to have a backup plan. And there were a lot of moments where I was like, what am I even doing here? Should I be moving back to the States? Like, this is kind of crazy. But I knew, uh, worst case scenario, if things didn't work out, my ultimate backup plan was that I could just go back and live with my parents for a bit and reset and get back on my feet and try something else. And I think reframing failure that way as, oh, this is just a data point, and it just tells me that something that I did didn't work out the way I tried it, was immensely helpful, because then it stops being like a stigma or something to avoid. It just means that now I can try it again, but don't do it the same way. Try something different. And so I say to anyone who wants to live in a different country or try something new, go for it. But it's not guaranteed and it's not easy. But the version of you that tries and goes for the thing that you want will always know more than the version of you that doesn't. Because, you walk away from that experience, one, with stories, do it for the plot, two, just with more insight into what you want and what you don't want, which I think are immensely important as you figure out who you are as a person. And three, you walk away from that dream or goal with a hell of a lot less regret because you tried it. And so it's not going to be this thing that's in the back of your mind where you're constantly wondering years later, man, I wonder what that experience would have been like if I had gone. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think that go for it is a really good attitude. And from my experience of trying to learn new things or do new things, accomplish new things, is don't wait until you think you're ready to do it, but just do it. The version one of whatever you do is probably not going to be great, but it's going to be better than not having done anything. And you're going to learn from that, and you're going to reapply it next time, and you're going to do it better. And that is pretty much with everything in life, whether it's learning a new skill, or even going for a relationship. Like, you will try something, you will learn from it, you will become a better version of yourself, and then you will bring that into the next relationship. Whether it's a job skill or a life skill or anything else like that. Don't wait until you think you're ready, because um, y- you would never start doing it.
Thanks for sharing your experience. I met you obviously when I lived in Amsterdam, but you've been a part of my life across jobs, actually, across time zones, and across continents now. And it's funny when I think of you, I kind of think of an Emil recipe, and I think of snappy wit and deep, deep insight and warmth, and all of those things blend together in a way that tastes just right. And so I'm really grateful for you bringing your wisdom and your light to this conversation. But more importantly, I'm actually very, very grateful that you are in my personal constellation. And I don't say it enough, but I love you very much. And so I just want you to know that.
I appreciate that. You know how much I love you as well. And even though you're on a different continent now, and even though this conversation got a little bit deeper and more real than our usual conversations that are perhaps a little bit more fun, you know that you always have a place at home when you visit. You always know that you're more than welcome. And I'm just so happy that we're still in touch, even through time zones. And it's been a lot of years. I don't even know how many, but I'm just so happy that we're still in touch and still good friends.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Emil.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
If you liked this episode, hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts or wild stories. Your feedback is like gold to us and keeps the good stuff coming. Also, follow us on social media and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep reflecting and exploring. Peace.